The great hall of the Galactic Concord was silent. 1,000 delegates from 12 different species sat in their seats, watching the massive holographic display floating in the center of the chamber. The image showed a beautiful blue planet covered in green lands and vast oceans. Then the image changed. Fire spread across the continents. Mushroom clouds rose into the sky. The oceans boiled. Within minutes, the blue planet became a dead, gray rock. Ambassador of the Empire stood at the speaking platform, his 4 arms folded behind his back. His gray skin reflected the light from the dying planet above him. "This," he said in a voice that echoed through the hall, "is what happens to violent species. The humans destroyed themselves 800 years ago. They were animals. They were dangerous. And in the end, they did what all dangerous animals do. They killed each other." The delegates nodded their heads in agreement. Some species had heads that moved up and down. Others moved side to side. But they all agreed. The humans had been a problem. Now they were gone. The galaxy was better without them. Smiled, showing his sharp teeth. "Let this be a lesson to all young species. Violence leads only to death. The conquered brings peace. The conquered brings order. The conquered will rule for 10,000 years." The delegates cheered. The hologram of dead Earth faded away. Nobody in that great hall knew that everything they believed was a lie. Far across the galaxy, in a region of space that the conquered had never bothered to explore, a mining vessel called the Endless Fortune moved slowly through an asteroid field. The ship was old and tired, just like its crew. They had been searching for valuable metals for 3 months and found almost nothing. Captain Sung sat in his command chair, rubbing his tired eyes. He was a male, middle-aged, with fatting gray skin that showed his years of hard work. He had not become a miner because he wanted to. He had become a miner because he had failed at everything else. "Captain," said a soft voice from the sensor station, "I am detecting something strange." Sung looked over at his sensor officer. Her name was, and she was the youngest member of his crew. She was also Her large black eyes were fixed on her screens, and her fingers moved quickly over her controls. "Strange how?" Sung asked. He did not expect anything interesting. Nothing interesting ever happened to him. "There are refined metals in this asteroid field," said. "Not natural deposits, refined, processed. Someone made these." Sung sat up in his chair. "That is impossible. This region is unexplored. No species has ever come here." "I know, Captain, but I am also detecting artificial structures," and paused. Her hands stopped moving. Her eyes grew wider. "Captain, I am detecting life signs." The bridge went quiet. Every crew member turned to look at. Sung felt his hearts begin to beat faster. Both of them. "Show me," he said. Put the sensor data on the main screen. The asteroid field filled the display, but hidden among the rocks were things that should not exist. Stations carved into the largest asteroids, ships moving between them in careful patterns, lights glowing in the darkness of space. Someone had built a civilization here, hidden from the rest of the galaxy. "Can you identify the species?" Sung asked. His voice was barely a whisper. Worked at her controls for a long moment. Then she made a sound that Sung had never heard before. It was the sound of pure fear. "Captain," she said, "I am detecting radio signals, voice communications, the language. The language is from the ancient records. Captain, these are humans." The word hung in the air like poison gas. Humans, the dead species, the violent animals who had destroyed themselves. The monsters from the old stories that parents told their children to make them behave. "That is impossible," Sung said, but his voice had no strength. "The humans are extinct. They have been extinct for 800 years." "I know what I am seeing," Captain turned to look at him. There were tears in her large eyes. "They survived. Somehow they survived, and they have been hiding here all this time." Sung made his decision quickly. "Turn the ship around. We need to leave. Now, we need to report this to the conquered." The pilot, an old male named, did not need to be told twice. His hands flew over his controls, turning the endless fortune away from the hidden human civilization. The engines powered up to full speed. But they were not fast enough. "Captain," said, her voice shaking, "a ship is approaching. It is coming from the asteroid field. It is. It is very fast." Sung watched the sensor display. A single contact was racing toward them. It moved faster than any ship he had ever seen. It was black, almost invisible against the darkness of space. Only its engine signature gave it away. "Can we outrun it?" Sung asked. "No, Captain. It will reach us in 2 minutes." Sung closed his eyes. He thought about his family back home. He thought about his daughter who was just starting school. He would never see her again. He knew this with perfect certainty. "Open a communication channel," he said. "Maybe we can talk to them. Maybe we can explain that we mean no harm." The communication officer tried. He sent messages in every language the Conquered used. He sent mathematical signals. He sent simple greetings. There was no response. The human ship came closer. Now they could see it on the visual display. It was shaped like a blade, long and sharp and deadly. There were no markings on its hull, no windows, no lights except for the blue glow of its engines. "They are locking weapons on us," said. "Captain, what do we do?" Sung did not answer. There was nothing to do. He could only watch as the human ship positioned itself in front of the endless fortune, blocking their escape. Then finally a message came through. It was audio only, and the voice spoke in broken galactic standard. The pronunciation was wrong. The grammar was strange, but the meaning was clear. "Witnesses," the voice said. "Nothing more, just that one word." Sung understood. They had seen something they were not supposed to see. They had found a secret that had been hidden for 8 centuries, and now they would be silenced. "Please," Sung said into the communication system. "We are just miners. We have families. We will not tell anyone what we saw. Please let us go." There was no response. "Begin recording," Sung said to his crew. "Send everything we have to the Conquered, our sensor data, our communications, everything. If we cannot survive, then at least the galaxy will know the truth." Began the transmission. The data streamed out into space, racing toward the nearest Conquered relay station. Maybe it would arrive, maybe it would not, but they had to try. The human ship fired. The endless fortune shook as the first blast hit their shields. Then the shields failed. Then the hull began to tear apart. Sung was thrown from his chair. He saw fire and smoke and stars where the ceiling used to be. The last thing he saw was the human ship, filling his vision like a messenger of death. The last thing he heard was screaming. Then there was only darkness. But the message had been sent. The data had reached the relay station, and soon the entire galactic Conquered would learn the terrible truth. The humans were not extinct. They were waiting. And now they knew they had been found. Deep in the veiled reach, far from the eyes of the galactic Conquered, humanity had built a new home. They called it Sanctuary Prime. It was not a planet. It was not a moon. It was an entire asteroid, hollowed out over centuries, transformed into a city that floated through the eternal night of space. Admiral Park stood alone in her private quarters looking at a photograph. The photograph was old. The paper was yellow and cracked, but the image was still clear. It showed a city at sunset, tall buildings reaching toward an orange sky, mountains in the distance, lights beginning to glow in thousands of windows. Seoul, the city where she was born, the city that no longer existed, was 67 years old. Her hair was gray. Her face carried the lines of too many battles and too many losses. She had been fighting since she was 16 years old. First, she fought to survive. Then she fought to protect others. Now she fought because she did not know how to do anything else. A soft chime told her that someone was at her door. She put the photograph away carefully and composed her face into the calm mask she always wore in public. "Enter," she said. The door opened and 3 people walked in, knew them all. She had worked with them for decades. They were the leaders of what remained of humanity. Director was the first to enter. He was in charge of intelligence, which meant he was in charge of secrets. He was a thin man with a gentle face that hid a mind as sharp as a knife. He smiled often, but his eyes never smiled. He knew things that would keep most people awake at night. Behind him came General Sora. She was the opposite of in every way. She was tall and strong, with muscles that came from years of combat training. Her face was hard and she rarely smiled. She commanded the ground forces, the soldiers who would one day set foot on enemy planets. She had lost her entire family when she was a child. The conquered had killed them. She had never forgotten. Last came Doctor. He was the oldest of the group, with white hair and kind eyes behind thin glasses. He was the chief scientist, the man who had developed the technology that kept humanity hidden and safe. He was brilliant, but he was also haunted. He had created weapons of terrible power, and he dreamed of the destruction they could cause. "Sit," said, gesturing to the chairs around her small table. "We have much to discuss." They sat. For a moment no one spoke. They all knew why they were here. A mining vessel had found them. The secret that had been kept for 800 years was now in danger. "The ship sent a transmission before we destroyed it," said. He spoke calmly, as if discussing the weather. "The conquered will receive the data within a few days. They will know we exist." "Then we must strike first," Sora said immediately. Her hands were clenched into fists. "We should attack before they can prepare. We have the advantage of surprise. We should use it." "And kill billions of innocent beings?" asked quietly. "Many species in the conquered had nothing to do with what happened to Earth. Do we punish children for the crimes of their ancestors?" "They are not innocent," Sora said. Her voice was cold. "They benefit from our death. They live in comfort because our people were murdered. Every child in the conquered is taught that we were animals who deserve to die. That is not innocence. That is participation." Raised her hand for silence. "We will not attack civilian populations. That is not who we are. That is not who we will become." She looked at each of them in turn. "But we cannot remain hidden forever. This day was always going to come. We have prepared for it. Now we must decide how to use what we have built." "What about the survivors from the mining vessel?" asked. "We captured the captain and 3 crew members. They are in holding cells. They are terrified." "Good," Sora said. "They should be terrified." "What would you have us do with them?" asked. "Execute them. We are not murderers." "We are survivors," Sora replied. "We do what we must to survive." Thought for a long moment. She thought about her grandmother, who had been a child when the bombs fell. Her grandmother had told her stories about Earth, about the beauty of the old world, about the horror of its destruction. Her grandmother had also told her something important. Revenge was a poison that destroyed the one who held it. But justice was different. Justice was necessary. "I have made my decision," said. "We will release one of the prisoners, the captain. We will send him back to the conquered with a message." Sora started to protest but continued. "The conquered believes we destroyed ourselves. They have taught this lie for 800 years. Let them learn the truth. Let them know that we remember what they did. Let them know that we are coming." "And the other prisoners?" asked. "Keep them comfortable, treat them well. They may be useful later." Stood up and walked to her desk. She picked up a pen and a piece of paper. Real paper made from real trees grown in the gardens of Sanctuary Prime. It was precious and rare. She used it only for the most important messages. She wrote 3 words, then folded the paper carefully. "Give this to the captain before you release him," she said, handing the paper to. "Make sure he understands that every word is true." Looked at the paper, his eyes widened slightly, then he nodded. The message read, "We remember everything." After the others left, sat alone in the darkness of her quarters. She thought about the past. She thought about the truth that the conquered had tried to bury. Humanity had not destroyed itself. That was a lie created by the people who had murdered Earth. 800 years ago, humanity had been expanding across the stars. They were learning new technologies. They were growing stronger, and the conquered had been afraid. 12 species, each one believing themselves superior to all others, had looked at humanity and seen a threat. They had decided to eliminate that threat before it could grow. The attack had been coordinated perfectly. Conquered agents, disguised as humans, had planted nuclear weapons in every major city on Earth. The explosions happened simultaneously, killing billions in an instant. Then the conquered fleet arrived and bombarded the planet from orbit, destroying everything that remained. They called it containment, they called it prevention, they called it necessary. The survivors called it genocide. But some humans had escaped. A young engineer named Shin had discovered an unstable wormhole at the edge of the solar system. He had led a convoy of refugee ships through it, not knowing where they would end up, knowing only that staying meant death. They had ended up here in the Veiled Reach, a region of space so empty and boring that no one had ever bothered to explore it. And here they had rebuilt. It had taken generations. The first colonists had suffered terribly. Many had died from hunger, from disease, from accidents, but they had survived. They had grown. They had remembered. And they had prepared. Now, 800 years later, humanity was no longer a scattered group of refugees. They were a civilization. They had ships and weapons and soldiers. They had scientists and engineers and doctors. They had everything they needed for war. Hoped it would not come to that. She hoped the conquered would see reason. She hoped they would accept responsibility for what they had done. But she was not foolish enough to believe hope was enough. The door chimed again. It was. "The captain has been released," he said. "He is on his way back to conquered space. He will arrive in approximately 2 weeks." Nodded, "And our other preparations?" Smiled his cold smile. "Everything is ready. Our agents are in position. Our ships are hidden where they need to be. When you give the order, we will remind the galaxy that humanity is still here." "Not yet," said. "Let them receive the message first. Let them understand what is coming. Fear is a weapon too." Bowed and left. Returned to the window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there was the dead rock that used to be Earth. Somewhere out there were the species that had murdered her ancestors. Somewhere out there was a galaxy that had forgotten the truth. Soon they would remember. And humanity would make sure they never forgot again. Captain Sung could not stop shaking. He had been shaking since the humans released him. He had been shaking during the 2 weeks of travel back to conquered space. He was still shaking now, standing before the grand assembly of the Galactic Conquered, telling them what he had seen. "They are out there," he said, his voice breaking. "Thousands of them, maybe millions. They have ships and stations and weapons. They are not primitive, they are not weak. They are waiting." The assembly hall erupted into chaos. Delegates shouted at each other in a dozen different languages. Some called Sung a liar. Others demanded military action. High Chancellor Eth, the supreme leader of the conquered, slammed his staff against the floor again and again, trying to restore order. "Silence," Eth finally roared. His voice was amplified by the hall systems, drowning out all other sounds. "We will have order in this chamber." Slowly the delegates quieted down. They returned to their seats, though many still whispered to their neighbors. Eth was like Sung, but where Sung was thin and tired, Eth was large and powerful. He had ruled the conquered for 50 years, and he had never faced a challenge he could not overcome. "Captain," Eth said, his voice calm and controlled, "you expect us to believe that the humans survived, that they have been hiding for 800 years, building a secret civilization, and we never noticed." "I have brought evidence," Sung said. He activated his data pad and holographic images filled the air above the assembly. Ships with strange designs, stations carved into asteroids, sensor readings showing refined metals and artificial energy signatures. This is what we recorded before they attacked us. The delegates studied the images in silence. Some of them looked afraid, others looked skeptical, a few looked angry. "This could be faked," said a delegate from the species. "Anyone with enough skill could create false sensor data." "I did not fake anything," Sung said. "My crew died trying to escape. I am the only one who survived. Do you think I would lie about something like this?" "Perhaps you were deceived," suggested a warrior from the back of the hall. "Perhaps some other species is pretending to be human to frighten us." Sung reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. His hands trembled as he held it up. "They gave me this, real paper made from real plants, and a message written in their own hand." Eth gestured and an assistant hurried forward to take the paper. The assistant brought it to the High Chancellor, who unfolded it carefully. His face changed as he read the words. For just a moment, Sung saw something in those ancient eyes, something that might have been fear. "What does it say?" demanded a senator. Eth did not answer immediately. He stared at the paper for a long moment. Then he crumpled it in his fist. "It says nothing important," he said. "The ramblings of primitives trying to frighten us. There is nothing to fear from a few survivors hiding in rocks at the edge of the galaxy. We will send scouts to investigate. If necessary, we will send a fleet to eliminate this minor threat. The conquered has ruled for 800 years. We will rule for 800 more." But his words did not calm the assembly. The delegates had seen his face when he read the message. They had seen the fear. 3 days later, the fear became justified. Nexus Station was the largest military shipyard in conquered space. It orbited a gas giant in the home system, protected by a dozen defense platforms and a permanent fleet of 50 warships. It was where the conquered built its most advanced vessels. It was considered impossible to attack. At exactly midnight local time, every communication signal from Nexus Station stopped. The defense platforms went dark. The warships stopped responding. When scout ships arrived 6 hours later, they found nothing but debris spreading slowly through space. There were no survivors. There were no distress calls. There were no sensor recordings, just destruction, complete and absolute. And floating in the center of the debris field, there was a flag. It was old and burned and torn, but the design was still visible, a blue background with a white symbol in the center. It was the flag of something called the United Nations, an ancient human organization that had died with Earth. Attached to the flag was a data chip. When conquered analysts opened the chip, they found a single file. It was a list of names. Every name was a conquered official who had authorized the attack on Earth 800 years ago. Next to each name was an address, current addresses, where they lived now. Some of those officials were still alive. Medical technology had extended far beyond what nature intended. The beings who had ordered the death of humanity were still walking, still breathing, still enjoying their comfortable lives. Not for long. Within a week, the officials on the list began dying. Admiral, a warrior who had commanded one of the bombardment fleets, was found dead in his sealed quarters. A knife of human steel was buried in his heart. There was no sign of how the assassin had entered or left. Senator, who had written the original proposal for the containment of humanity, collapsed at a state dinner. Her death was later determined to be poison. The poison was unlike anything the conquered had ever seen. It had been designed specifically to kill her and no one else. One by one, the architects of genocide met their ends. Some died in public, surrounded by guards who could do nothing to protect them. Others died in private in places that should have been completely secure. Each death was different. Each death was impossible. Each death was a message. The galaxy began to panic. High Chancellor Eth addressed the assembly again. This time his voice was not so calm. "We are under attack," he admitted. "But we will not be terrorized by ghosts. We will find these human remnants. We will crush them, and we will remind the galaxy that the conquered cannot be challenged." But even as he spoke, even as he promised victory, something was happening on his own world. Director walked through the streets of the capital, wearing the face of a humble clerk named. He had lived on this planet for 30 years, hiding in plain sight, watching and waiting. He had built a network of agents, gathered information, prepared for this day. Now his preparation was complete. He entered a small communication center, nodded politely to the technician on duty, and sat down at a terminal. His fingers moved quickly over the controls. To anyone watching, it would look like he was doing routine maintenance work. In reality, he was planting a seed. The seed was a virus designed by Doctor himself. It would spread through the Conquered's communication networks, silently copying data and sending it back to Sanctuary Prime. Military deployments, defense codes, ship movements, everything the Conquered wanted to keep secret would soon belong to humanity. When he was finished, stood up and left the building. He walked to a small park and sat on a bench, looking up at the alien sky. He took out a communication device, heavily encrypted, and sent a short message. "The garden is burning, time to plant new seeds." Thousands of light years away, Admiral Park received the message. She smiled, though there was no joy in it, only determination. "How are the Conquered responding to our strikes?" she asked her tactical officer. "They are confused, Admiral, frightened. They cannot understand how we are reaching their most protected targets. Some officials are fleeing their homes. Others are demanding more security. Their military is arguing about what to do." Nodded. "Good. Let them argue, let them fear. The longer they spend talking, the more time we have to prepare for the next phase." She looked at the tactical display, showing the positions of their hidden fleets, the locations of their agents, the weak points in Conquered defenses. "They thought they killed us," she said quietly. "They celebrated our extinction. They built monuments to their own power and forgot the crime that created it." She turned to face her officers, her crew, her people. "Now we will teach them the truth. We did not die, we will never die, and we will never ever forget what they did to our home." The officers saluted. The crew prepared for battle. And across the galaxy, humanity began to emerge from the shadows, ready at last to claim their place among the stars. Or to burn everything down trying. High Chancellor Eth stood before the greatest fleet ever assembled in the history of the Galactic Conquered. 10,000 warships floated in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming in the light of a nearby star. Every species had contributed. Every world had sent its best. This was the Purification Fleet, and its mission was simple: find the humans and destroy them completely. 800 years ago we made a mistake, Eth announced, his voice broadcast to every ship. We allowed survivors to escape. We did not finish what we started. Today we correct that mistake. Today we end the human threat forever. Fleet Admiral commanded the armada from the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Victory. He was a warrior, 7 feet tall, with scales the color of dried blood and eyes that had seen 1,000 battles. He had never lost. He did not intend to start now. But unlike his leader, was not overconfident. He had spent the past weeks studying everything the Conquered knew about humanity. The old records, the new intelligence, the impossible attacks that had killed some of the most protected beings in the galaxy. "They survived our best attempt to exterminate them," he told his officers. "They have had 8 centuries to prepare for a second attempt. Do not underestimate them. Do not assume victory. Assume nothing except that we are walking into a trap." His officers exchanged nervous glances. They had expected a simple mission, was telling them it would be anything but simple. The Purification Fleet entered the Veiled Reach 3 days later. Immediately, things began to go wrong. The asteroid fields were a maze. Sensor readings were unreliable. Ghost signals appeared and disappeared without pattern. The fleet's scouts reported contacts that vanished when investigated, ships that seemed to be there one moment and gone the next. "They are playing with us," said grimly, "drawing us deeper, stretching our formation." "Should we pull back, Admiral?" asked his tactical officer. "No, we came here to find them. We will find them." He turned to the communications officer. "Order all ships to maintain close formation. No one breaks ranks for any reason." But maintaining formation in an asteroid field was nearly impossible. Ships had to maneuver around massive rocks. Some groups fell behind. Others pushed ahead. Slowly, without anyone realizing it, the purification fleet began to spread out. That was when the humans attacked. The first wave came from a direction no one expected. 100 human ships emerged from inside a large asteroid, their hatches hidden so perfectly that Concord sensors had passed them by. They struck a supply convoy, destroying 20 vessels in less than a minute, then vanished back into the rocks before anyone could respond. The second wave hit the rear of the fleet. Another 100 ships, moving in perfect coordination, targeting the engine sections of Concord warships. Ships that lost their engines became sitting targets, unable to maneuver, unable to escape. The third wave came from above, below, all directions at once. General Sora commanded the ground forces, but today she commanded from a warship, coordinating the attack from a tactical center deep within Sanctuary Prime. She watched the battle unfold on a massive holographic display, her eyes tracking every ship, every missile, every explosion. "Strike Group 7 target the command ships. Strike Group 12 fall back and regroup at Point Delta. Strike Group 3, she paused, studying the enemy formation. Strike Group 3 hold position. I see an opening." She saw everything. She knew exactly where each of her ships was, exactly what they were doing, exactly what they would do next. She had been planning this battle for 20 years. Every rock in this asteroid field was mapped. Every hiding spot was prepared. Every possible enemy movement was anticipated. The conquered fleet was stumbling through her trap, and they did not even know it yet. Lieutenant flew her fighter through a forest of asteroids, her hands steady on the controls. She was 23 years old, and this was her first real battle. She had trained for this moment since she was a child. She had dreamed of it, feared it, longed for it. Her grandmother had survived Earth. She had been 5 years old when the bombs fell, one of the few children who made it to the evacuation ships. She had grown up in the refugee fleet, married, had children, She had told stories about the old world, about the green forests and blue oceans, about cities full of life and hope. She had also told about the day the sky burned, about the screams that never stopped, about watching everything she knew turn to ash. Carried those stories with her now as she flew toward a cruiser. Her targeting computer locked on. Her finger found the trigger. "For Earth," she whispered and fired. The missile streaked toward the cruiser, followed by a dozen more from her squadron. The ship tried to turn, tried to bring its defensive weapons to bear, but it was too slow, too big, too confident. The missiles struck. The cruiser's shields flickered and died. Secondary explosions rippled along its hull, and then, slowly, magnificently, the ship broke apart. Felt nothing but cold satisfaction. This was justice. This was revenge. This was everything she had been born to do. A voice crackled in her communicator. "Nice shot, rookie, but don't get cocky. We have a long fight ahead." The voice belonged to Han, her squadron leader. He was 45 years old, a veteran of countless skirmishes with pirates and smugglers. He had been fighting since before was born. He knew what war really meant. "Stay close to me," continued. "Watch your flanks, and remember, we are not here to die, we are here to win." "Understood, sir," said. She fell into formation behind his ship, matching his movements, learning from his experience. The battle continued for hours, then days. The conquered fleet, so mighty and so confident when it entered the veiled reach, was being torn apart piece by piece. Human technology proved superior in every way. The ghost drives allowed human ships to appear and disappear without warning. One moment the space would be empty. The next moment, a strike force would be there, weapons firing. Then they would be gone again, leaving only destruction behind. The null shields absorbed energy weapons completely. Conquered laser cannons, plasma torpedoes, particle beams. Nothing could penetrate human defenses. The conquered ships had to rely on physical projectiles, which were slower and easier to dodge. And the Vengeance missiles were the most terrifying weapons of all. Each missile could split into a dozen smaller missiles in flight. Each smaller missile could split again. A single Vengeance missile could become hundreds of warheads, overwhelming any defense system. Doctor had created these weapons. He had built them from nothing, using only the limited resources of the refugee fleet and centuries of desperate innovation. He was proud of what he had accomplished. He was also horrified. He watched the battle from his laboratory on Sanctuary Prime, surrounded by screens showing death and destruction. Every explosion was his creation. Every dead enemy was killed by technology he had invented. Was this necessary? He asked himself, not for the first time. Could we have found another way? But he knew the answer. The conquered had never offered peace. They had never offered justice. They had only offered extinction, and so humanity had been forced to prepare for war. Back in the asteroid field, the conquered fleet was breaking. Admiral watched his command fall apart around him. 1,000 ships destroyed. 2,000. 3,000. His formation had collapsed. His officers were panicking. His crew was begging him to retreat. "No," he said. "We do not retreat, we push forward. We find their base and we destroy it." "Admiral, we cannot sustain these losses. We must fall back and regroup." "Fall back where?" demanded. "They are everywhere. They know these rocks better than we ever could. Retreat means death. Our only hope is to find their heart and cut it out." He pushed his fleet forward, deeper into the trap. He knew it was a trap. He did not care. He was a warrior. He would rather die fighting than live running. But far away, Admiral Park was not watching the battle in the asteroid field. She was looking at a different display entirely. A display showing the 12 of the conquered. A display showing the positions of human strike teams, hidden in plain sight, waiting for her order. "The distraction is working," she said to her staff. "Their main fleet is committed to the veiled reach. They are vulnerable." "All teams report ready, Admiral," General Sora confirmed. "We can launch the assault at any time." Closed her eyes. This was the moment she had waited for, the moment she had dreaded, the moment that would change everything. "They wanted to know if we survived," she said softly. "Now they will learn why we should not have." She opened her eyes. "Launch the assault. All teams, all targets now." And across the galaxy, humanity rose from the shadows at last. The attacks began at exactly the same moment across 12 star systems. Human strike forces emerged from hiding places that had been prepared for decades. Defense platforms fell silent. Orbital stations went dark. Government buildings were seized. Military installations were surrounded. On Prime, the capital of the Galactic conquered, Director finally removed his mask. For 30 years he had been a humble clerk, invisible and forgettable. Now he stood in the Grand Assembly Chamber, a weapon in his hand, surrounded by a team of human soldiers. The delegates were frozen in their seats. High Chancellor Eth sat on his throne, his face pale with shock. Guards lay unconscious on the floor. The great hall, which had witnessed 1,000 declarations of conquered power, was now under human control. "You thought we were extinct," said, his voice calm and pleasant, as if he were discussing the weather. "You celebrated our death for 800 years. You taught your children that we were monsters who destroyed ourselves. Every word was a lie." He activated a holographic display. Images appeared above the assembly, images that the delegates had never seen. Cities on fire, children screaming, ships bombarding a planet from orbit. "This is what you did to Earth," continued. "Not a suicide, a murder. 12 billion people killed in a single day, and then 8 centuries of lies to cover up the crime." Eth found his voice at last. "We did what was necessary. Humanity was a threat. Your violence, your aggression, your constant wars. You would have destroyed the galaxy if we had not stopped you." Smiled, it was not a pleasant smile. "And yet, when threatened with extinction, we did not respond with extinction. We could have bombed your worlds the way you bombed ours. We could have killed billions the way you killed billions, but we did not." He walked closer to the High Chancellor, close enough to touch. "We are not here for revenge, Eth. We are here for acknowledgement. We are here for justice. We are here to show you who we really are." The holographic display changed. Now it showed a woman's face, broadcast from somewhere far away. Admiral Park looked out at the assembly with eyes that had seen too much, endured too much, lost too much. "I speak to all worlds," she said, "human and conquered alike. 800 years ago, your leaders tried to erase my species from existence. They failed. Today, we could do to you what you did to us. We have the power, we have the weapons, we have every right." She paused. Every delegate was watching, every world was listening. "But we also have a choice. Vengeance would satisfy our dead. It would not bring them back. It would only create new dead, new orphans, new hatred that would burn for another 1,000 years. That is not what we want. That is not what we survived for." The delegates looked at each other in confusion. They had expected threats, demands, ultimatums. They had not expected this. "We offer you something you never offered us," continued. "A future, a chance to build something better than what came before, a chance to acknowledge the past and move beyond it." She listed her terms: public acknowledgement of the genocide, dismantling of anti-human propaganda, surrender of those responsible who still lived, acceptance of humanity as an equal member of galactic civilization, memorials on every to honor Earth's dead. "These are our conditions," she said. "Accept them and we can begin to heal. Reject them and we will do what we must to protect ourselves. The choice is yours." The broadcast ended. Silence filled the assembly hall. Then Eth began to laugh. It was a bitter, broken sound. "You think we will accept this? You think we will humiliate ourselves before a species of survivors? Never, never." He turned to his guards who were beginning to recover. "Kill them. Kill all the humans. Destroy their fleets. Show them that the conquered will never." A delegate stood up. Her name was, and she had been quiet throughout the crisis. She was young for a delegate, barely a century old. She had grown up hearing the stories of human violence, but now she had seen the truth. "No," she said. Her voice was soft, but it silenced Eth's ranting. "No more killing, no more lies. We did this, we caused this, and now we must make it right." Other delegates began to stand. The who had always valued peace. The who calculated that war would be more expensive than surrender. Even some of the warriors who respected strength and saw humanity's restraint as the ultimate demonstration of power. Eth looked around at his crumbling support. "You cowards, you traitors, we are the conquered, we rule the galaxy." "We ruled through fear," replied. "We ruled through lies. That rule is over now." Guards moved toward Eth, not to protect him, to arrest him. The High Chancellor, the supreme leader of the Galactic Conquered, was taken into custody by his own people. But the war was not entirely over. In the Veiled Reach, the remnants of the Purification Fleet made one last desperate attack. Admiral had gathered his surviving ships, less than 2,000 from the original 10,000, and was driving towards Sanctuary Prime. "If we can destroy their capital," he told his officers, "we can still win. Without their leadership, the human forces will collapse." General Sora received word of the incoming attack. She had been coordinating battles across the galaxy, but now she turned her full attention to the defense of her home. All available ships return to Sanctuary Prime, she ordered. Ground defenses full activation. Prepare for close combat. The battle was brutal. Was a skilled commander and his remaining ships were the best the Conquered had. They broke through the outer defenses, destroying dozens of human vessels. They pushed deeper, closer to the main station. Sora commanded from the front lines now, leading her forces personally. A Conquered missile struck her ship. The explosion threw her across the bridge. When she regained consciousness, she found that her left arm was gone, torn away by shrapnel. She refused medical attention. Later, she said, her voice tight with pain, after we win. In the fighter squadrons, Lieutenant and Han fought together as they had throughout the battle. Was wounded, his ship badly damaged, but he refused to retreat. There's a heavy cruiser breaking through our lines, he told over the communicator. It's launching missiles at the civilian sections of Sanctuary Prime. We have to stop it. Hao asked. Our weapons are almost empty. I'll handle it, said. There was something strange in his voice, something final. You take the squadron and protect the station. Don't let any more missiles through. Sir. That's an order, Lieutenant, and you're going to be okay. You're strong, you'll lead them well. Before she could respond, ship accelerated. It dove toward the heavy cruiser, dodging defensive fire, weaving between explosions. Understood what he was doing. She screamed into her communicator for him to stop. He didn't stop. Ship slammed into the cruiser's bridge at full speed. The explosion was massive, beautiful, terrible. The cruiser broke apart. The missiles stopped. Was gone. Felt the tears freezing on her cheeks in the cold of her damaged cockpit. But she did not have time to grieve. There were more enemies, more missiles, more civilians to protect. She turned her ship toward the nearest threat and pressed the attack. Hours later, it was over. Admiral was dead, his flagship destroyed by Sanctuary Prime's defense platforms. The remaining Conquered ships surrendered. The Purification Fleet, the mightiest armada in galactic history, had been completely defeated. Across the galaxy, the news spread. The Conquered had accepted humanity's terms. Memorials were being planned. Prisoners were being released. The war was ending. 10 years later, Admiral Park walked through the memorial of 12 billion on Prime. She was retired now, living quietly, trying to find peace. The memorial was a vast garden, filled with plants from old Earth, carefully cultivated from seeds that had been saved during the evacuation. Delegates from all species passed through the garden. Some wept, some were silent. A young child asked her mother, "Why are they crying?" Her mother answered, "Because we made them cry first." Doctor taught at the new university on the colony world of New. His students included humans and non-humans alike. Technology should unite, he told them. Never again divide. Director had vanished. Some said he was still watching, still ensuring that the Conquered kept its promises. Others said he had finally found rest. No one knew for certain. That was exactly how he wanted it. General Sara trained a new generation of soldiers with her remaining arm. We train for war, she taught them, so that we never need to fight one. And Captain, promoted after the Battle of Sanctuary Prime, visited her grandmother in a small apartment on the station. The old woman was over 100 years old now, fragile but still alive. She held a photograph of Seoul at sunset, the same photograph that Admiral had once kept. "We made it," grandmother said softly. "They know we're here now. They will never forget again." Her grandmother smiled, her eyes bright with memories of a world that no longer existed. "Good," she said. "Now live. That is the best revenge of all." Held her grandmother's hand and looked out at the stars. The veiled reach was hidden no more. Human and Conquered ships passed peacefully through its space. New colonies were being founded. New friendships were being formed. New hope was growing. Far away, orbiting a dying star, a ring of preserved debris from Earth floated in eternal memorial. It was a reminder of what had been lost. it was also a reminder of what had risen from the ashes. Humanity had survived the worst the galaxy could offer. They had fought back without becoming monsters themselves. They had proven that strength and mercy could exist together. And now at last they were home. Not on Earth. Earth was gone forever. Home among the stars, home in the future, home wherever they chose to build their lives. The dead were remembered, the living moved forward. And the galaxy would never be the same again.